Psst. Hey, would you do me a favor? Grab your phone or smart device and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
Is your local business or organization looking to give back to the community? Help keep our roads clean by joining the Adopt a Road program administered by Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful. Keeping our roads clean is a great way for team building as well as exposure for your business. Select the road your business wants to adopt and dispatch a team to remove litter and debris. Participants will receive 2 signs showing their organization's name as well as safety equipment and instructions for cleaning roads. You can help keep Tampa Bay beautiful by adopting your own road today. To learn more, visit hcflgov.net/cleanhc.
right, good evening and welcome to the September 19th, 2022 Zoning Hearing Master Meeting. I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I'll be serving as the Zoning Hearing Master this evening. Before we get started, would you please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. Again, I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I'll be serving as the Zoning Hearing Master this evening. If you would please, if you have any devices on you that make noise, silence them at this time. And then I'd like to introduce Mr. Brian Grady of Hillsborough County Development Services Department to introduce the staff and also any agenda changes or withdrawals or continuances.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer. Again, for the record, Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. Before we go to the changes to the agenda and the published withdrawals and continuances, I'll introduce staff that's joining us virtually tonight from Development Services. Staff Israel Monsanto, Michelle Heinrich, Chris Grandillard, Isis Brown, Tim Lampkin, and Sam Ball. From the County Attorney's Office, Cameron Clark. From the Planning Commission, Jillian Massey. And from our Transportation Review staff, Richard Perez, James Ratliff, and Shada Tirado. We do have a number of changes to the published agenda, and I'll go through those changes first, and then I'll go through the published withdrawals and continuances beginning on page 4 of the agenda. The first change is on page 9 of the agenda, item D3, rezoning PD 22-0461. The applicant is requesting a continuance to the November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. I believe the applicant is either here or online to explain the reasons for the requested continuance.
All right, thank you. We'll hear from the applicant. This is PD 22-0461.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Addie Clark with Gardner Brewer Hudson at 400 North Ashley Drive. On behalf of our client, we're requesting a continuance to the hearing date of November 14th to allow us additional time to resolve some entitlement phasing questions with the co-applicant. And we appreciate staff's time and consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here or online, members of the public who wish to speak to the continuance of this item in support or opposition? All right, don't hear anyone. Okay, then rezoning PD 22-0461 is continued to November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting.
Thank you.
The next item on the change is on page 7, item C1, rezoning standard 22-0698. The applicant is David Wright. The applicant is requesting a continuance to the November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. I believe the applicant is online to explain the reasons for the requested continuance.
Good evening. My name is David Wright with the applicant. My address is P.O. Box 273417, Tampa, Florida. Yes, I'm requesting a continuance to the November 14th hearing. We need some additional time to work out some issues that would bring the request more in line with the Planning Commission staff's vision for the property. My client has been in the hospital over the past month, and I've not been able to work with him on this. So we would very much appreciate a continuance to the November hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak to the continuance of rezoning 22-0698? All right, I don't hear anyone. All right, the continuance request is granted, and rezoning 22-0698 is continued to the November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting.
The next change on the agenda is on page 7, item C2, rezoning standard 22-0927. The applicant is requesting continuance to the November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. I believe the applicant is in the audience to speak to the request for the continuance.
Hearing Officer Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue North, number 451, St. Petersburg. We're down to just the Transportation Department, which gave us quite a few items just a couple hours before the continuance date. So we'd like to move it forward to November so we can address those, which we think we'll be able to well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here, Mr. Pressman? Thank you. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition or support of the continuance of rezoning 22-0927? All right, I don't hear anyone or see anyone. All right, the continuance is granted. Rezoning 22-0927 will be continued to the November 14th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting.
The next change is on, next change of the agenda is on page 7 of the agenda, item C4, standard rezoning 22-1096. The applicant is Martin Commercial Properties. Staff is requesting a continuance of this item to the October 17, 2021 zoning hearing master hearing. There's still outstanding issues regarding some interpretation issues and some legal description issues that warrant further review of this, and therefore that is the reason staff's requesting a continuance. Again, the continuous date would be October 17, 2021 zoning hearing master.
Mr. Grady, would you clarify the year, please?
October 17, 2022, sorry. That's a
Thank
typo.
you.
Sorry.
All right. So this would be rezoning 22-1096. Staff is requesting a continuance to October 17th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak to this continuance? All right. Do not hear anyone or see anyone. So rezoning 22-1096 is continued to the October 17th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting.
And the last change on the agenda is on page 10, item D7, major mod application 22-1112, land site investment. Staff is requesting a continuance of this item to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing to allow for some additional analysis and review of transportation-related issues and further review of that information. So again, staff is requesting a continuance to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing.
All right, thank you. This is rezoning, well, actually, major modification 22-1112. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak to the continuance of this item? All right, I do not hear anyone or see anyone. Continuance is granted. Major modification 22-1112 is continued to the October 17th, 2022 zoning hearing master meeting.
That concludes the changes to the agenda. I'll now go through the public withdrawals and continuance beginning on page 4 of the agenda. The first item is item A1, rezoning PD 22-0562. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A2, rezoning PD 22-0567. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A3, rezoning PD 22-0648. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A4, major mod application 22-0671. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A5, major mod application 22-0686. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A6, major mod application 22-0689. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A7, rezoning PD 22-0696. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A8, rezoning PD 22-0719. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A9, rezoning PD 22-0853. This application is being continued by the applicant to the November 14, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A10, rezoning PD 22-0856. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A11, major mod application 22-0860. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A12, rezoning PD 22-0865. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A13, rezoning PD 22-0866. This application has been continued by the applicant to the November 14, 14, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A14, major mod application 22-0867. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A15, rezoning PD 22-0877. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A16, major mod application 22-0884. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A17, rezoning standard 22-0926. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A18, rezoning PD 22-0943. This application is being continued by staff to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A19, rezoning standard 22-0945. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A20, rezoning PD 22-0948. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A21, rezoning PD 22-0949. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A22, rezoning standard 22-1027. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A23, rezoning standard 22-1039. This application has been continued by the applicant to the December 12th, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A24, rezoning PD 22-1082. This application is out of order to be heard and has been continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A25, major mod application 22-1086. This application out of order to be heard and has been continued to December 12th, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A26, rezoning PD 22-1103. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A27, rezoning PD 22-1106. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A28, rezoning PD 22-1107. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A29, rezoning standard 22-1169. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A30, rezoning standard 22-1217. This application has been continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. Item A31, rezoning standard 22-12221. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master hearing. And finally, item A32, major mod application 22-1301. This application is being continued by the applicant to the October 17, 2022 zoning hearing master. That concludes all withdrawals and continuances.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. All right, I'm going to read into the record the meeting procedures for this evening before we move forward. First of all, the agenda consists of items that require a public hearing by a hearing master before going on to the Board of County Commission for a final decision. I will conduct a hearing on each item today and will submit a written recommendation. My written recommendation will be filed with the clerk of the board within 15 working days after the conclusion of today's public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will consider the record of today's public hearing and my recommendation and will make the final decision on the application at a publicly noticed meeting on a date and time set by the Board of County Commissioners. The hearings today will be informal. I will ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony and may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate. I will decide all questions of procedure. I will take evidence, but it will exclude evidence that is irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony shall be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to supplement or explain other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding of fact unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil court action. The order of presentation at today's hearings will be as follows. First, county staff will introduce each item. Then the applicant and the applicant's witnesses will have 15 minutes to present the proposal. County Development Services will have 5 minutes to present its findings and recommendations. Planning Commission will have 5 minutes to present its finding of compliance or non-compliance with a comprehensive plan. Proponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments in support of the proposal. Opponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments against the proposal. County staff will have 5 minutes to present any amended recommendations, and the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal and summation. The 15 minutes that are allotted to proponents and opponents is the total time among those who wish to speak. So if there are a number of persons who wish to speak, the 15 minutes will be distributed among you. If you may appoint a spokesperson, a single spokesperson to represent a group's views if you wish. When you come to the microphone to speak, please state your name and address for the record. The meeting is being recorded, so please speak into the microphone so your testimony can be recorded. When you're finished speaking, please see the clerk to my right to sign in for the record. Now we'll hear from the county attorney's office, who will state the legal requirements for requesting oral argument at the public meeting where the Board of County Commissioners will make a final decision.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Hello, my name is Cameron Clark. I'm an assistant county attorney. Tonight's public hearing is the first step of a two-step rezoning process. This hearing is designed for rezoning applicants and interested parties to present testimony and evidence. Any evidence presented tonight will become the complete factual record of each application, and no additional evidence can be introduced after the closing of each application. The second step of the rezoning process is a public meeting before the Board of County Commissioners, where the board will take a decision on each application heard tonight. Tonight's applications are scheduled to be heard by the board as November 3rd, 2022 land use meeting. When considering applications, when considering applications, the board will only review the record created at tonight's hearing and the recommendation made by the hearing master for each application. The hearing master will file a recommendation for each application heard tonight on October 10th. The Board of County Commissioners has established a policy that directs which rezoning and major modification applications are to be placed on the consent agenda of the board's land use meeting. Applications that propose to add density outside the urban service area and applications that are on roadways with a failing level of service are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. Applications that do not have consistent recommendations of approval or denial are also not qualified to be placed on the consent agenda. And finally, applications that have had evidence or testimony provided to the record by non-applicant parties of record, either prior to or at tonight's public hearing, are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. The board shall allow public testimony by parties of record at its meeting to consider the hearing master's recommendation for any item on the regular agenda. Any public testimony shall be limited to the record of the proceedings before the hearing master tonight, unless additional evidence has been found admissible in accordance with section 10.03.04D of the Land Development Code. A party of record is someone who fits into at least one of the following four categories. First, someone who is present tonight and presents testimony or documentary evidence. Second, someone who is certified by the U.S. Postal Service as having mailed notice of tonight's hearing. Third, someone who submitted documentary evidence to the master file at least 2 business days before tonight's hearing. Or fourth, someone who submitted documentary evidence by proxy at tonight's hearing. Again, the content of oral argument before the board shall be limited to the content of the testimony and other evidence that's submitted verbally or in writing to the hearing master tonight. It's the role of the county attorney's office to ensure that only individuals who meet these requirements are allowed to speak before the board, and to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is introduced or allowed at the board's public meeting. For these reasons, please make sure that all information you wish the board to consider at its public meeting is entered in tonight's record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, all testimony tonight must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, please stand if you're able, raise your hand, and I will swear you in. Those online who plan to speak, also please raise your hand to be sworn in. All right. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brady, please call the first case.
The first case is agenda item C3. Again, C1 and C2 were continued as part of the changes at the beginning of the agenda. So the first item on tonight's agenda is item C3, rezoning standard 22-1070. The applicant's Bremley Homes LLC. The request is rezoned from ASC 1 to commercial general. Chris Grandin Leonard will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening, hearing officer Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg. I have a PowerPoint for you. We're located in a roughly Sefner area. Next slide, please. That's fine. We're located on 574. This is one of two parcels, but just to give you an idea of the location. Next slide, please. This is the property indicated in the red on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Next slide, please. And again, it is two separate parcels coming in together. Next slide, please. This is the existing site. As you can see, it's quite busy. Next slide, please. The issue is rezoning from AS1 to CG. Next slide, please. So looking at the zoning map, which I think is one of the critical factors here, is that there is a clear trend for intensive zoning. From the site, it is virtually abutting a CG, then CN, PDC, which is older, and 2 Ms. So there is a lot of intensity by zoning wise on the roadway. Next slide, please. CG contains trucks and CN contains rentals. Next slide, please. This is from 1988. The PDC is older, but approvable for commercial. Next slide, please. This is what's existing in the CG. Next slide, please. And this is actually, this should be existing on the CN. That would be my error. So let me clarify that in the record. Next slide, please. Now, along with what I've shown you in the intensity, on the south side is a CXX railroad track that runs throughout the entire region. Next slide, please. On the aerial, as you can see how it runs. Next slide, please. And this would be on the ground. You can see Martin Luther King on the right and then the railroad tracks. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of traffic counts, this is, MLK is an arterial roadway. In terms of traffic counts, one count on one side of the property on MLK is 14,300 vehicles per day. On the other side, 11,200 vehicles per day. That's an intense roadway. But there's another dimension to the roadway. Next slide, please. And that it is one of the official truck routes in Hillsborough County. So we know that we have a high volume of traffic. We know that we have an intensity of traffic in terms of what's traveling on that roadway. Next slide, please. Now, the difference between the Planning Commission and their characterization as rule is compared, and that's, of course, my impression of their position to you, that along the major roadways, it simply is not rule in any way, shape, or form. With respect to the Planning Commission, they're not recognizing the intensity of the immediate area on MLK, not recognizing the roadway usage, not recognizing directed truck traffic as a truck route, not recognizing the railroad, not recognizing the zoning trend, and not recognizing the uses or intense uses in the immediate area. That is what I would say, hearing officer, the difference between the reports and our view of the property. Next slide, please. So they promote a remote rural residential use on a high volume road that is loud, high traffic, truck traveled, railroad traveled, arterial roadway, intensive use is already present. And those are the elements of the locational waiver that's also been submitted into the record. Next slide, please. When you look at the Sefner Mango Community Plan, goal number 3 very clearly, starkly, does note commercial development should only be directed to the US 92 and Martin Luther King Boulevard. Now, I think it's fair to say that there are other policies that look at differences between the rural area and the urban area, but I do want to put this goal out specifically because it is a clear goal and is a major part of the Sefner Community Plan. Next slide, please. Other goal is to encourage revitalization and redevelopment of older existing commercial areas and uses, which is clearly what's happening here. Mr. Capaz will be upgrading and improving the site from what it has been operating as. Next slide, please. It's also been there for quite a long time. 1999 had some activity. I believe that's 2004 that's blanked out, which you can see the current site and current activities. So back to 2004 and somewhere between 99 and 04, it was established and was in the dynamic or configuration it is now. Next slide, please. And that would be it. So in summary, I think I've been very clear. The stark difference between the staff reports, their opinions and their direction, their stance as what ours is. Be happy to answer any question.
Don't have any for you yet, Mr. Pressman. Thank
Okay.
you.
And just as an aside, I have a copy of the PowerPoint in my car. I'm going to run out real quick and put it in the record if I may.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Development Services.
Good evening. Chris Groundlenar, Plan of Development Services. I'm here to present application standard rezoning 22-1070. The applicant is proposing to rezone from the existing ASC 1 agricultural single family conventional to commercial general CG. Approximate 4.5 acre property is comprised of 2 parcels, both zoned ASC 1 agricultural single family conventional. The subject parcels are located 200 feet northwest of the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Shady Acres Road. The area is comprised of single-family residential and commercial. The subject parcels are directly adjacent to single-family residential zoned ASC 1 to the north. To the south, the parcels are adjacent to vacant parcels zoned ASC 1 and RSC 6. To the east, the parcels are adjacent to single-family residential zoned ASC 1 and CG restricted. To the west, the parcels are adjacent to a radio tower complex zoned ASC 1. Further south across State Road 574 are CSX railroad tracks. The parcel is located in the rural service area. The subject property is designated Residential 1, Res 1 on the future land use map. The Planning Commission in the report mentioned several compatibility concerns regarding the proposed rezoning. Number 1, the subject site does not meet commercial locational criteria as the nearest qualifying node at McIntosh and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard is located greater than 300 feet as per policy 22.2 of the future land use element of the comprehensive plan. The applicant has requested a waiver, which is in the record. Number 2, the Sefter Magno Community Plan discourages retail uses along Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in the rural area and discourages commercial encroachment in residential areas between US 92 and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Development Services concurs with this assessment by Planning Commission. The further encroachment of commercial into the residential area raises compatibility concerns with the neighboring lots. Based on the above considerations, including the inconsistencies with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, staff finds the requested CG zoning district incompatible with the existing zoning and development pattern in the area and not supportable. That concludes my staff report. Glad to answer any questions you may have.
Don't have any questions for you. Thank you. We'll hear from the Planning Commission.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Officer. This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the rural area and within the limits of the Sefner-Manco Community Plan. It's located within the Residential 1 future land use category. The subject site's surrounded by Residential 1 on all sides. Light industrial is further to the east, and Residential 4 is located to the southwest of the subject site. The applicant is proposing a zoning district that would allow uses that would encroach into the agricultural and large lot low density residential areas, particularly to the north of the site, and thus does not meet the intent of Objective 4 or Policy 4.1 of the future land use element. Proposing to expand CG uses in this area would not be complementary to the rural residential character to the north of the site as per Policy 16.3. A rezoning to CG would further a pattern of strict commercial encroaching onto residential areas in the rural area and does not reflect a development pattern that concentrates the most intense uses towards the intersection, but rather introduces more intense uses where uses should be transitioning to a lower intensity as per Policy 16.2. The subject site does not meet commercial locational criteria as per objective 22 of and policy 22.2 of the future land use element, as the nearest qualifying intersection node is located at McIntosh and Dr. Martin Luther King Drive Jr. is located greater than 300 feet away. Planning Commission staff has reviewed the waiver and concluded that it is inconsistent with the explicit direction of the Safner Mango Community Plan that specifically states restrict retail development along US 92 and Martin Luther King Boulevard outside the urban service area to the existing commercial zoning districts. Goal 2 of the community plan discourages the encroachment of commercial uses in the residential areas between US 92 and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and the subject site is located within this area. Moreover, any commercial uses that meet locational criteria south of US 92 and north of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive are to be limited to child care office and place of worship, none of which are identified in this rezoning. And thus a rezoning to CG would not facilitate the vision of the Safner Mango Community Plan. And based upon these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Massey. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, I don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Do not hear anyone. All right. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal or summation, if you wish.
Thank you. That's all.
All right. Thank you. That will close the hearing on rezoning standard 22-1070.
The next item is agenda item C5. Again, C4 was continued as part of the changes to the agenda. So the next item is agenda item C5. Is rezoning standard 22-1105. The app is Jane A. Demaria. The request is rezoned from AR to AS 0.4. Chris Grandin-Leonard will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening. I'm John LaRocca, representative of the applicant owner. My address is 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. I'm an urban planner, zoning, land entitlement consultant, and I'd like to present briefly our request this evening. The application and rezoning request is from AR to AS01, AR being the agricultural rural district, and the AS 0.4, the agricultural single family estate zoning district. The rezoning request is to recognize the property's current lot area size of approximately 4.8 acres being less than the 5-acre lot size required by the AR district. The applicant's intent is to maintain the property's rural, semi-rural character and at the same time create a lot that meets minimum area, height, bulk, and placement regulation standards. The applicant is not seeking this rezoning to split the lot or create additional residential units. I want to make that clear because it was a question asked during the review process. The future land use plan designation is agricultural estate, AE, with a plan that suggests or plans for 1 unit per 2.5 acres. Again, the current zoning is AR. The proposed zoning is AS 0.4. The applicant does not propose to alter the rural, semi-rural character of the property by rezoning the property. Existing structures may be expanded, and additional accessory structures may be constructed consistent with the Land Development Code standards and regulations permitted in both the AR and AS 0.4. Regarding the rezoning proposals compatibility with the community's land use area, the future land use plan designation again is AE, agricultural estate. The lot size and uses existing on the property and proposed after this rezoning are typical of the uses and lot sizes generally scattered throughout and characteristic of the area. The uses intended for the property, other than the current single-family home that's there, is to allow the home and potential expansion or alterations, barns, and other accessory structures of the same character. The proposal is consistent with the AE Future Land Use Plan map designation, and again, will not be out of character with the established land use pattern of the lot sizes and zoning designations in the area. There are no wetlands on the property. All the property is considered upland. The site will continue to utilize well and septic systems of utilities in that area. I respectfully request you find the evidence presented this evening and validated by the comments and recommendations in the staff report that have been put in the record supportable for approval. I and the applicant agree with the report that's been prepared and the review by the Planning Commission. I'm here available to answer questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sir?
Chris Granlenard again, Development Services. Here to present 22-1105. The applicant is proposing to rezone the existing AR Agricultural Rural District to AS 0.4 Agricultural Single Family Estate 0.4. The approximate 4.8 acre property is zoned AR Agricultural Rural. The parcel has a single family residence on the lot. The subject parcel is located at 18737 Rustic Woods Trail. The minimum lot size of the AR zoning district is 5 acres. The subject parcel has 4.8 acres, which makes it a non-conforming lot. The applicant's intent is to create a lot that meets minimum area, height, bulk, and placement regulations. The requested AS 0.4 zoning district minimum lot size is 2.5 acres, which would make it a conforming lot. The area consists of single-family residential and agricultural. The subject parcel is directly adjacent to residential to the east, zoned AS 0.4 and AR, and a nonprofit wildlife sanctuary to the south, zoned AR. To the west, across Rustic Woods Trail, is a horse farm zoned AR. To the north, across Tyler Run Avenue, is a vacant pasture zoned AR. Parcel is located in the rural service area. Subject property is designated agricultural estate, AE, on the future land use map. The Planning Commission finds the proposed use consistent with the comprehensive plan. The surrounding uses are similar to the request, residential and agricultural. Also, the rezoning would make the parcel a conforming lot. Therefore, rezoning the subject parcel from AR to AS 0.4 would be consistent with the existing zoning pattern of the area. Based on the agricultural estate, AE, future land use classification, the surrounding zoning and development pattern, and the proposed uses for the AS 0.4 zoning district, staff finds the request approvable. That concludes my staff report. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Hearing Commission, Planning Commission.
Hi, this is Jillian Massey with our Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the rural area and within the limits of the Keystone Odessa Community Plan. As mentioned, the future land use designation of the site is agricultural estate 1 to 2.5. The proposed rezoning is not changing the single family residential character of the surrounding area and is a compatible rural residential use. The applicant has indicated that their intention for the rezoning is not to develop an additional residential structure on the site. Rather, it is to be able to add to the existing structure and to allow for the development of accessory uses on site that meet minimum standards in an acceptable zoning district in the Land Development Code. The proposed zoning district will be directly at the intersection of Tyler Run Avenue and Rustic Woods Trail, thereby creating a transition of uses where the AS 0.4 zoning district is located at an intersection and transitions to AR further away from the intersection. The site also is directly adjacent to a similarly zoned parcel of AS 0.4 on the west side. The subject site is also consistent with objectives 29 and 30 and their respective policies regarding agricultural uses and the retention of agricultural land in the county, as it does not seek to change the agricultural and rural residential character of the area and will not impede on the surrounding uses. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the Keystone Odessa Community Plan, as it does not seek to initiate a higher density than what the community plan allows. And based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right. All right, thank you. Was that the applicant? You said nothing further? Okay, applicant, thank you.
I will say nothing further.
Thank you. All right. That will close the hearing on rezoning 22-1105.
The next item is agenda item C6, rezoning standard 22-1240. The applicant is TC Florida Development Incorporated. The request is to rezone from M&AI to M Manufacturing. Isis Brown will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Hi, good evening. Ria Lopez with RVI Planning. For the record, my address is 4762 Del Sol Boulevard, Sarasota, Florida 34243. And I'll also share a presentation. Just want to confirm that you are able to see this?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we're here today on behalf of the applicant, TC Florida Development, and the project we have before you is a standard rezoning petition. The subject site is 1.2 acres, which is highlighted in yellow in the site plan before you. This subject site is a part of a larger parcel that is approximately 12 acres in site. The parcel is located along Powell Road to the east of US Highway 41 and immediately west of the railroad tracks. It has access along Powell Road to the south. The future land use of the subject site, as well as a majority of the surrounding area, is light industrial. The zoning for the 1.2 acres is agricultural industrial, whereas the remainder of the parcel is zoned as manufacturing. The site is surrounded predominantly by industrial land uses. As you can see on the site plan, to the south we have industrial warehousing. To the west we have boat and RV storage, and immediately east are the railroad tracks. To the north are vacant lands that are also zoned agricultural industrial. As you can see on the site plan, there's also single-family residential that's further east of the railroad tracks. However, with the context of the subject property, you can see that that is well separated from the industrial land uses by not only the railroad tracks, but also a stormwater pond and additional open space. The request we have before you is to rezone the agricultural industrial portion to manufacturing. This will allow for the entire parcel to have a single zoning designation and be developed for warehousing use. This request is consistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. The proposed zoning designation of manufacturing furthers the intent of the underlying future land use of light industrial by allowing for manufacturing, processing, and assembling uses, as well as intensive commercial uses or other industrial uses. Further, it'll allow for the entire parcel to be developed under a single zoning district. The proposed industrial designation is compatible with the adjacent land uses. And lastly, the development of this parcel with warehousing will further economic development within the county. So in conclusion, we are in agreement with the staff recommendation that our request is approvable. We're also in agreement with the Planning Commission's recommendation of the petition being consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Further, the request is also consistent with the Land Development Code, and we are requesting for no waivers. The proposed rezoning district is compatible with the surrounding land uses. And lastly, the rezoning would support economic development in the county. With that, we respectfully request for your approval, and my team and I are here to answer any questions. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. All right, Development Services.
Good evening, Isis Brown, Development Services. The request is to rezone from the existing AI, Agricultural Industrial Zoning District, to the proposed Manufacturing M with Restriction Zoning District. The proposed zoning M permits manufacturing, processing, and assembling uses, intensive commercial uses, and other industrial uses on lots containing a minimum of 20,000 square feet. The current zoning, agricultural, industrial, proposed manufacturing. The acreage of the property is approximately 1.2 acres, which is also 52,273 square feet. And current intensity uses will be 1 dwelling unit per acre. The proposed would be 0.75 FAR, floor area ratio, which is approximately 39,204 square feet. The site is located in an area comprised of light industrial, agricultural, mixed, and commercial uses. The adjacent properties are zoned AI to the north, manufacturing to the east, M and PD 02-0214 to the west, and railroad line, to the west. The subject parcel immediately surrounding consists of properties within the light industrial future land use category. The subject parcel is also located in a coastal high hazard area. Therefore, allowable uses may be further prohibited or restricted in accordance with the requirements of Part 3.04.02 of the Land Development Code. Additionally, the site is located north of the Alafaya River, and water distribution system improvements will need to be completed prior to the connection of the county's water system. The improvements include 2 funded CIP projects that are currently under construction: C3 2001 South County Potable Water Repump Station Expansion, and C3 2011 Potable Water Inline Booster Pump Station, and will need to be completed by the county prior to insurance and building permits that will create additional demand on the system. Based on the above consideration, staff finds the proposed request approvable with the following restrictions: that water distribution system improvement will be completed prior to the connection of the county's water system. This ends my report. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Planning Commission?
Hi, this is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is designated light industrial. It's located in the urban service area and within the limits of the South Shore Area Wide Systems Community Plan. The subject site is currently vacant with planned development zoning and is surrounded by the light industrial future land use category to the north, northwest, west, southwest, and south. The community mixed use 12 future land use category is found to the northeast, east, and southeast. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of policy 1.4 as it is compatible with the surrounding area that has several industrial uses in proximity to the subject site. The site also meets the intent of Objective 16, policies 16.2, 16.3, 16.10, and 17.7 regarding the protection of adjacent land uses through various buffering and mitigation measures. The request is consistent with the Economic Development Objective 26 and Policy 26.5 that seeks to incentivize non-residential properties to help provide industrial and employment areas for securing longer-term economic development. The proposed use will help provide jobs to the area. The South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan has language per the Economic Development section on recognizing preferred development patterns and implementing the community's desires to the greatest extent possible. As stated earlier, the proposed intensity and scale of the development is compatible with the existing non-residential development pattern. And based upon these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this item? Don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this item? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Applicant, do you wish to add anything further?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This will close the hearing on rezoning 22-1240.
The next item is agenda item D1, major mod application 22-0313. The applicant is Fletcher Shops Incorporated. The request is for a major modification to an existing plan development. Tim Lampkin will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening, Ms. Hatley. For the record, my name is Patricia Ortiz. My address is 2810 North Central Avenue, Tampa, Florida 33602, and I have been sworn in. I'm here tonight on behalf of the shops at Fletcher, and we are seeking a major modification to this plan development that was approved back in 1973. In fact, this is the first modification of this plan development, and it's been almost 50 years. Back in 1973, the approval granted a mix of office and commercial uses on both the upper and lower levels of the buildings located on site. Today, we're here kind of in response to the changing market conditions, seeking a dual development option. The first option would be to keep things as they are with the commercial and office on both floors. And option two, which would allow for commercial apartment use on the second story. And we would limit that to 28 commercial apartments. And here I'll just kind of put down what we're looking for option one. Can you see that on the Elmo? Yeah. Oh,
yes.
Straighten it out. Okay. So basically, we're seeking to allow the existing mix of commercial and office uses to continue on both levels. Right now, there is a maximum of 60,552 square feet of area. We're not proposing any changes to the building configuration, access, or parking layout, no increases to FAR, ISR, et cetera, and no variations for option one. Option two requires some changes because we're adding a new use, so we have to come into compliance with the LDC. So in summary, we're proposing office and commercial uses on the first floor for a total of 30,276 square feet, and as I said, 28 commercial apartments. The access points from Fletcher Avenue will be reduced from the 3 that currently exist to 2. The access points from 15th Street will be reduced from 2 to 1. A one-way drive aisle will be provided along the East 15th Street frontage. Sidewalks will be provided along 15th Street. We'll provide both vehicular and pedestrian cross-access. So the vehicular cross-access will go to the west. The pedestrian cross-access will go to the south, allowing, the patrons or persons living within the apartments to come on over to the site. We are proposing 159 parking spaces where 152 are required. This will necessitate the restriping of the parking lot. Again, there will be no change to the building configuration as a built site. We we're not proposing to move the building or increase FAR, ISR, or building coverage. However, we are asking for some variations with option 2. Yes.
Before you cover that one, or pick it up, those items listed there, then those are changes that will come only if option 2 is implemented. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And these, they're referred to as commercial apartments, but these are residential living spaces. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will meet the definition of commercial apartment in the Land Development Code, which essentially is an apartment over retail space.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. We are asking for some variations, and I'll just kind of put this down for you. Essentially, these variations have to do with landscaping and buffering, which has changed over time. Of course, there have been many changes since 1973. So the commercial apartment use requires a 10% increase in the parking landscape. We can't meet the requirements of the parking landscape today because of the configuration. So we certainly cannot increase that by 10%. Code section 60606 requires a 20-foot wide type B buffer along the southern property line between this commercial use and the apartment complex. There's a buffer that exists right now, but it's probably 2 to 3 feet wide. It has some mature palm trees in it, but the placement of the building really prevents compliance with this. And then we're requesting several variances from Code Section 60404, which deal with the parking lot landscaping. And again, that is primarily because of the constrained nature of this developed site. In my project narrative, I went into great detail to discuss the hardships and special and unique circumstances, which I'm sure you've read the report. I don't know that you need me to go over those in detail.
Just, if you would please, the staff report lists variances from section 60604, 60606, and 61116. And I thought you mentioned another section, 60404? Is that what you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying here. Let me double check and make sure I've got
Okay.
that right. That is the parking lot landscaping, so give me one second. My apologies, it's section 60604, not 60404.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I can maybe show you a picture of the site to orient you with the location. The property is located at the intersection, the southwest corner of 15th and Fletcher in the University Community Planning area. You've probably seen this building before. It's been there for a while. And with that, I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have or maybe save the time for rebuttal.
No questions for you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Tim Lampkin, Hillsborough County Development Services. The property associated with this has a future land use designation of Office Commercial 20. The applicant is seeking a major modification to the existing PD 73-0351 to allow 2 development options. Option 1 is to allow the existing mix of commercial and office uses to continue on the upper and lower levels with no change to the building configuration. Access or parking lot layout. Option 2 proposes to allow a mix of office and commercial uses on the lower level and commercial apartment on the upper level with no change to the existing building configuration. Option 2 proposes, as the applicant just stated, to reduce the number of access points and to add cross access to the west, construct a one-way drive aisle along 15th Street frontage, and add a sidewalk along 15th Street. Neither development option seeks increases to the number of the buildings, the FAR, the building coverage, the access points, or impervious surface. As the applicant stated, the new development option will convert the second floor of the existing building from commercial to residential for 28 apartments. The subject of this rezoning is located at 1441 East Fletcher Avenue, south of East Fletcher Avenue, west of North 15th Street, east of North Nebraska Avenue, and north of LaPlace Circle. The surrounding zoning and development patterns consist of a mix of uses located approximately 2,900 feet east of State Road 93 interchange. Nearby is RMC 20 zoning developed with an apartment complex located to the south and the north. General commercial designated properties are located both north and east of the subject site. As the applicant noted, the existing buildings on the site and many nearby and surrounding properties were built in the early 70s, consistent with the development patterns and the regulations in place at the time. Since then, many development regulations have changed, most notably those addressing use buffers and parking lot design. The applicant is requesting multiple variations, including the following. So it's LDC section. There was a Scrivener's error on the front page. It's section 6.04.04 and section 6.06.04 regarding off-street vehicular use, perimeter buffer adjacent to the right-of-way, and the perimeter landscaping. Additionally, variation to section 6.06.06 regarding the landscaping and buffering, and then a variation to LDC section 6.11.16 to eliminate the increased parking lot landscaping. Most of these are in place already. Variation 1 through 5 just reflects the development pattern and the age of the structure. Transportation had a number of variances, and just briefly, I'll list them. Administrative variance for driveway spacing, or the applicant had variances, let me correct that, for transportation to review. Administrative variance for the number of driveways, substandard roadway, administrative variance for the throat depth. The county engineer found the above administrative variances approvable for the rezone 22-0313. And an in-depth review may be found in the transportation, which I'm sure you've already reviewed in a section of the report. Staff has not identified any compatibility issues relative to the surrounding properties. The proposed use is located in a mixed-use area of commercial and multifamily development in close proximity to the subject site. The proposed project with the proposed development standards, existing scale and restrictions may be found compatible with nearby development patterns. The proposed development has also been found consistent with the future of Hillsborough County, unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Based upon the above, staff finds the request approvable. That concludes staff's presentation, unless there are any questions.
All right, yep, let's go back to the variances, please. And so I'm seeing a variance from LDC section 60604, off-street vehicular use, the perimeter buffer, the buffer adjacent to the right-of-way, and perimeter landscaping. So that's one. Is that correct?
So no. So I kind of lumped them together for space on the cover page. So they have variations 1 through 4. I'm opening up the code right now. You can bear with me. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Take your time. And if it's in the report on a different page, point me to it. I'm looking at it. I just don't see.
Okay.
604.
I think it's just a Scrivener's error, but let me look at the report too. So. Okay. Oops. So 4. Okay. I think it actually might be a Scrivener's error in the applicant's presentation, because this 6.0404 are transportation related.
Okay.
One second.
She did clarify that, and I think she agrees with you. It's 6.06.04. I believe that's.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that part.
That's okay.
And that's what I was going to. Sorry.
So variance 1 is from 6.06.04, and that's the buffer landscaping.
Yes.
Or buffer adjacent to right-of-way, let's see, perimeter buffer. And then 60604 off-street vehicular use area, Part E. So we got Part G and Part E. And then variation 3, 6.06.04 off-street vehicular use area, Part D. Again, perimeter buffer. And variation 4 is LDC section 60604. Variation 5 is landscaping, 60606. And then variation 6 is LDC section 611.16, apartment commercial, Part C. So that's the 10% increase in parking. That one, I understand. And that's it. I think that clears it up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have any more questions for you, Mr. Lampkin.
Thank you.
All righty. Planning Commission?
This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in Office Commercial 20 or OC 20 future land use category. It's located in the Tampa service area and within the limits of the University Area Community Plan. The proposed redevelopment meets the intent of Objective 1 of the future land use element of the comprehensive plan by providing and maintaining growth in the urban service area. The proposed rezoning also meets the intent of policies 1.4 and Objective 16 as it is compatible with the surrounding area. The area is considered urban with high density residential, light commercial, and high commercial intensities. The proposed redevelopment is consistent with the University Area Community Plan Goal 5, which encourages housing and neighborhood revitalization within the urban infill and redevelopment boundary map. The existing shopping center and the proposed apartments are not expected to exceed the maximum intensities of the Office Commercial 20 future land use category and is consistent with Objective 8 and Policy 8.1. And based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds that the major modification is consistent with the future of Hillsborough comprehensive plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. All right, Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. And applicant, anything further?
No, I'd just like to say thanks for your time. And I think Tim did a really good job with this report. Those variances are outlined on pages 10 and 11 of the staff report.
I saw them. Thank you very much.
And we do have one letter of support in the record. I did receive 2 phone calls. They were both basically wondering what was going on. When I explained the situation, both persons were happy. That was for the Sunscape Apartments across on the north side of Fletcher and for a gas station also on the north side. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. That closes the hearing then on major modification 22-0313.
The next item is agenda item D2, rezoning PD 22-0433. The applicant is David Wright with TSP Companies Incorporated. The request is rezoned from business professional office to a planned development. Tim Lampkin will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening again. My name is David Wright. Address is P.O. Box 273417, Tampa, Florida 33688. As stated, this is a request to rezone the subject property from BPO to planned development for residential townhome development. This would represent a transitional infill development between the existing post office to the south and the single-family detached residential to the north. We are in agreement with both the Planning Commission and Development Service staff reports. We're not aware of any opposition to this request, and we respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. All right, Development Services.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Hillsborough County Development Services. The subject property is associated with the future land use designation of residential 9. The applicant is seeking a major modification from a BPO to PD to allow up to 12 townhomes. The approximately 1.38 acre subject property is located approximately 525 feet north of East State Road 60 and on the west side of North Miller Road within the urban service area. The subject property is currently zoned as a BPO, Business Professional Office. Nearby, ASC 1 is located to the south and west of the site. Immediately south of the subject site is developed with a post office, and the west is undeveloped. RSC is located to the north of the subject site. East of the subject site is the right-of-way for North Miller Road. To the east of that is RMC 12, developed with an apartment complex, and CG zoning developed with commercial. Located further north is residential, whereas located to the south of the subject property along East State Road 60 is more commercial development. The applicant requests a waiver to LDC Part 6.01.01 and note 8 to not require an additional 2 feet of setback for every 1 foot of building height above 20. A 5-foot buffer with type A screening is required north and west of the subject site. The applicant proposes a 5-foot landscape buffer with type B screening to provide additional screening to the north and west and to mitigate the request to not require the additional 2 feet of setback for every 1 foot of building height over 20 feet. The applicant proposes a 20-foot buffer with type B screening along the southern property boundary, meeting the requirements of the Land Development Code. Staff finds the waiver supportable with the applicant proposed additional screening. Staff finds the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the regulations of the Hillsborough County Land Development Code. Based on these considerations, staff finds the request supportable with conditions. And that concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
No questions for you. Thank you. Planning Commission.
This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the residential 9 future land use category. It's in the urban service area, and it is not located within the limits of a community plan. The applicant is proposing a residential development of 12 dwelling units within the urban service area. The proposed number of dwelling units meets the minimum density requirements per policy 1.2 and is an acceptable density that we would expect to see in the residential 9 future land use category. The addition of 12 single-family dwelling units is compatible with the residential character of the surrounding area. The proposed density of residential development provides an appropriate transition from single-family residential dwellings located to the north and the post office and commercial use located to the south at the intersection of North Miller Road and State Road 60. The proposed development also meets the intent of policy 16.8 and 16.10 as comparable densities in various housing types already exist in the area. Goal 12 and objective 12-1 of the community design component requires new developments to be designed in a compatible way with the surrounding area. The proposed development is compatible with the existing residential uses and is an example of medium density residential development. Based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough comprehensive plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right. Applicant, anything further?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That closes the hearing then on RZPD 22-0433.
The next item is agenda item D4. Again, application D3 was continued at the beginning of the hearing. So again, the next item is application number D4, rezoning PD 22-0684. The request is to rezone from commercial general to planned development. Israel Monsanto will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Thank you. For the record, Jake Kramer with Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, number 2100. We have a brief presentation. Madam Hearing Officer, we also have a red line of some conditions we've been working on with staff, as well as some support letters, if I may.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jake Kramer, for the record. Next slide, please. So the property is really right in the heart of the Brandon Boulevard corridor. Next slide. CG zoning, OC20, future land use. We are within the urban service area. We are within the Brandon community plan, and we are within the Brandon State Road 60 overlay. Next slide, please. The Brandon overlay is really what we had to work on the hardest with staff on this application, and we'd like to thank them. Believe it or not, it's been a 2.5-year journey to get here. We've worked really, really hard. We were dealing with a 1920s structure, a 1960s gas station, and a 1980s gas pump canopy. So the site was essentially completely paved, and we really had to work hard to figure out how can we come as close as possible so that this family can expand their business and also meet the intent of the overlay. So this list, I won't belabor the point. This goes into the staff presentation, but the big things we're doing is we're removing that ugly gas canopy. We're removing the outdated pole sign on the property. Unfortunately, we are going to have to remove the 1920s home that's now used as a hair salon. Unfortunately, with everything we had going on with the property, we weren't able to retain that. Next slide, please. So here you can see the existing site conditions. You can see the canopy up front. You can see the secondary business in the rear, and you can see a number of access points that we're reconfiguring. And as you can see here, there's virtually no buffering to any of the streets. Next slide, please. So on the proposed site plan, you can see we've really worked hard to add buffering. We've really worked hard to make the site work internally much better. I think ultimately it's going to be much safer for the owner, for the public visiting, and pedestrians that are walking around the site. Next slide, please. As far as compatibility, just to point out a few of the neighboring businesses. I mean, this is a auto repair facility. There's a Jiffy Lube right down the road. There's Nativity Catholic Church across the street. We do have a support letter that I passed out from there. Crafty Crab owns the property to the east and north, adjacent on both sides. We have a support letter from them as well. Next slide. So as you can see in the staff report, the staff pointed to a number of policies that are focused on revitalizing older commercial areas, and we believe we're taking advantage of those policies to effectuate this project. Next slide. So we're requesting one waiver and two variations. Again, these go to the history of the historic nature of the property. They go to the fact that a small portion of the property was taken when Brandon Boulevard was expanded a number of years ago, and trying to rehabilitate them for current use. Next slide. The PD waiver, this is for the front of the property fronting Brandon Boulevard. We're requesting a reduction essentially from 30 feet down to 10 feet. Now, we have worked with natural resources staff, and we are going to be able to effectuate all of the plantings except for a small reduction in the number of trees, just because we physically can't fit them. Next slide, please. Variation, the first variation request is for the east side of the property. There has not been a landscape buffer on the east side of the property historically. We did review county records and determined that the Crafty Crab property does have the 6 feet of buffering. However, because it's an older property, they don't have the number of plantings that would be required today. As mitigation, we proposed to add a great deal more greenery around the property. Okay. And again, they are supporting this application. Next slide, please. Similar story on the variation request on the north. However, there we were able to squeeze in 3 feet of buffer rather than the 6 feet. Again, that property owner is in support of the application. Next slide. So as far as transportation and connectivity, I really feel like this is going to be a much safer site. So we have reduced the number of access points to the west to make them safer and further away from the light. We have added pedestrian cross access to the east to the restaurant, and vehicular cross access or stub out will be to the north. So again, this site I think is going to work much, much better in the long run. Next slide, please. Next slide. So again, in conclusion, we have neighborhood support, including the church, including Crafty Crab. We have staff recommendations of approval. And I think I have a few minutes, extra minutes left, so my clients would like to say a couple of words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justin Wright, and I reside at 13421 Glen Harwell Road. I'm here asking for approval for rezoning of my automotive business, Huff Automotive. I'm requesting rezoning so that I may continue my family business, which started with my father opening a location in Plant City 49 years ago. And I'm hoping to pass it down to my children one day. I have grown up my whole life around the industry and know nothing different. I opened my location and started my business 15 years ago and outgrown my shop. My shop was an eyesore for the greater part of 20 years in the Brandon area. When I was able to purchase the property, I started to fix it up, and doing so, I received many compliments from not only customers, but neighbors in the area on how well maintained and appealing the property has become. I'm asking for your support and approval so that I may continue to support my family and my employees as well. Thank you for your time.
What's your name again, sir?
Justin Wright.
Mr. Wright?
Yes, sir. Yes,
and are you in title of the property now? Or are you purchasing?
Deed for contract.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that was 6 years ago, I believe, 6 or 7 years ago.
I understand. All right. Thank you. Please sign in with the clerk's office.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda Wright, and I reside at 13421 Glen Harwell Road in Dover. I'm here for our business, Huff Automotive, which is located at 702 East Brandon Boulevard in Brandon. I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of our rezoning of the business. To say this has been a very long and tedious process would be an understatement. We have been diligently and willingly working with staff for a little over 2 years now to meet county regulations and develop a site plan with their recommendations and suggestions so that we may get their approval on this plan. The countless hours spent on this project, along with the tremendous expense of legal fees, surveys, traffic analysis, engineer drawings, and numerous site plans, have caused more stress on our family than I would have ever wanted to endure. This business is our livelihood. This business supports multiple families that rely on us to put roofs over their heads and foods on their table. With that being said, we have even proposed to tear down one business, which is my salon, in the rear of the property to make this plan work. Those sacrifices have been a hard pill to swallow, but again, we have been working hard with staff and are willing to make these changes. We are just a small family business trying to live the American dream, work hard to instill in our children what good work ethic is, provide honest, affordable service to the public, and continue to support our community, in which you'll see we've submitted some letters from our neighboring schools and church. Our hope is that you will consider and support this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Thank you. Jake Kramer again. I realize that I didn't explain to you the revised condition number 3.
Okay.
The intent of the condition is exactly the same. This was simply some language we worked out with Natural Resources because we wanted to make it clearer for the reviewers exactly how many trees and plantings would occur there. In my understanding is Natural Resources and Development Services are both in agreement with this revised condition. So with that, as you can tell, we've worked hard on this application. I really think, the Brandon overlay, hopefully somebody will take a look at it at some point because it's very, very difficult for these rehabilitation projects. But with that, we would just ask for your approval, and our expert team is here if you have any questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Development Services.
Good evening. Israel Monsanto Development Services. As stated by the applicant, the request tonight is to rezone a parcel from commercial general to a planned development district to allow the continuation of a motor vehicle repair use on the site with modifications to the site design. The parcel is within the State Route 60 Brandon Boulevard overlay district, specifically in the suburban sector. Currently, the motor vehicle repair building is located on the southern portion of the site along Brandon Boulevard, and an office is located on the northern portion of the parcel. Surrounding areas consist today of commercial and office uses. A private school and church are located directly south. The site has experienced several building expansions since its original configuration in 1961. In the 60s, it was developed as a gas station with a gas pump canopy in its frontage. The building in the back, utilized today as a hair salon, was established in the mid-1920s, according to Hillsborough County property appraisal records. The gas station had 2 driveway connections to State Route 60 and 1 to Ridgewood Drive. The building on the back also maintained access from Ridgewood Drive. Throughout the years, the gas station site was improved. Records show the gas pump's canopy has been in existence in its current location or configuration since at least 1988. By the late 1990s, impervious areas were added on both sides of the gas station building. And during the widening of State Route 60 in the 1990s, FDOT took the corner of the property along State Route 60 and Ridgewood Avenue. The westernmost access driveway along State Route 60 was eliminated. According to the project narrative, the applicant constructed an expansion of the existing 1960 former gas station building without permits. The property is not currently under code enforcement action. However, the applicant intends to rectify the situation and obtain zoning approval and after the fact building permits to bring this property into compliance. The auto repair shop, Huff Muffler, has been in operation in this location since 2012. The business initially operated with only 2 service bays, but since 2012, the applicant expanded the businesses by adding 2 prefabricated metal structures, one on the eastern side of the original building and the other one on the western side. A gas station canopy, which was constructed in the 80s, remains on the property today. The suburban sector of the State Route 60 overlay district does not require building design standards or parking placement requirements. Instead, it requires the provision of a 30-foot wide landscape buffer along State Route 60, vehicular use area buffering in accordance with the code, building facades architecturally finished, and specific monument design standards. Some of these requirements are triggered when a site undergoes building expansions or renovations, and the cost of such work exceeds certain percentages threshold compared to the value of existing buildings on site. Based on the scale and level of building expansions and renovations since 2012 to date, the site is being subject to the suburban overlay requirements. The applicant consequently, as part of this PD rezoning, proposes significant changes in addition to maintaining the current building expansions to bring the property closer to compliance with the overlay standards, and is requesting waiver to reduce the buffer area along State Route 60. PD variations to eliminate vehicular use areas or reduce them are also being requested. Other standards of the overlay district will be met. As noted in the project narrative and our staff report, there are some changes being proposed to the site, such as removal of the gas canopy, removal of non-compliance pole signs, addition of architecturally finished finishes on all the structures, removal of 2 access points along Ridgewood Avenue, addition of vehicular and pedestrian stop outs to adjacent parcels, addition of a 10-foot landscape buffer along State Route 60, removal of the hair salon building to allow the relocation of stormwater facilities. Since the landscape buffer along State Route 60 will be reduced, the PD petition includes a waiver request from Section 314.062. The waiver requests a variation of 20 feet and associated plantings to reduce the landscape buffer from 30 feet to 10 feet in the direct frontage of that parcel. Staff has evaluated the applicant justifications to reduce the buffer as reasonable. As noted in our staff report, the site has been in operation since the 60s with a canopy area and parking spaces serving the site in front of the building. It has been also subject to FDOT takings, and compared to the current site conditions, no buffer is provided between the parking areas and canopy and the front property line. Additionally, the applicant has modified the request compared to the original site plan, showing 8 feet of front buffer areas and has added 2 more feet. The applicant has also made site modifications to move parking spaces to the back of the building in order to accommodate more buffer area along the frontage. In addition to the waiver requests to the overlay requirements, the applicant has included 2 PD variations from Section 60604E, which requires 6-foot landscape buffers between vehicular use areas and properties adjacent. In this case, the buffer areas are being reduced from 3 feet to the north and 1 foot to the east. Staff has reviewed the buffer variation justifications submitted by the applicant per LDC Section 50306C6 and finds they meet the criteria of approval. The justifications provided by the applicant are reasonable. The proposed site design, again, will increase green areas to accommodate more landscaping and open spaces being added to the north where a building exists today. Additionally, the adjacent parcels to the north and east also consist of commercial uses. The affected property owner of the parcel surrounding the site, it does not object to this PD rezoning. And similar to the justifications for the 30-foot waiver request, the proposed alternative in site design by the applicant mitigate the variations being requested. Your recommendation for this application is required to also include a finding on whether the requested variations meet the criteria of approval as part of your final recommendations. To conclude, compared to the current site conditions and design, the proposed improvements to the use would provide for an overall site that is significantly closer to the intent of the Brandon Boulevard Overlay District. The intent of this district is to improve the appearance of new and existing development along State Route 60 between I-75 and Dover Road by enhancing landscaping, building, and sign requirements. The site does not have a buffer today along State Route 60. However, the proposed project will provide 10 feet in its direct frontage. Other comparable nearby sites do not provide this buffer. The 10-foot buffer area will include landscaping as proposed by Natural Resources. The applicant is also committed to improve existing building with architecturally finished facades as included in our proposed conditions. Stormwater ponds will be placed behind the buildings in accordance with the overlay. And additionally, the impervious surface of the parcel is being overall reduced, providing for more green space. Planning Commission has found the request consistent with the comprehensive plan. No design exception or administrative variances were requested for transportation staff review, and they do not object to this request. No objection was received by any reviewing agencies. The project will be subject to site development regulations and after the fact building permits that will be required if the PD is approved under the proposed conditions. As the applicant stated, we did receive a proposed change to the condition number 3. Natural Resources and Development Services agree with those changes. They will provide for more specificity for the planting along State Route 60. Also, I want to have the applicant clarify that the reduction of the State Route 60 overlay from 30 feet to 10 feet will be in the direct frontage, but due to the FDOT clipping, the diagonal section will be 3 feet.
Okay.
And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Monsanto. Planning Commission?
Hi, this is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The site is designated as Office Commercial 20 or OC20. It's in the urban service area and it's within the urban center character district of the Brandon Community Plan. OC20 surrounds the subject site on all sides. Residential 4 is located further north. Residential 6 is located further to the south. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of the OC20 category as it is an anticipated use in this corridor, and this future land use category has the proposal has an FAR of 0.22. Planning Commission staff believes that this proposal is sensitive to the existing character of the area, which is already a prominent commercial corridor in the county where similar and complementary uses already exist. The proposal meets the intent of policy 1.4 of the future land use element. The proposed rezoning also meets the intent of the neighborhood protection policies of objective 16 and policies 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, 16.5, 16.10, and 17.7. The development pattern of the surrounding area has a concentration of the most intense uses along State Route 60 and a decrease of intensity farther up along Ridgewood Avenue into the residential areas. Similarly, the applicant has designed the site so that the internal arrangement of the uses also reflects this pattern. The community design component provides guidance on commercial developments. Goal 17 encourages developments that improve the ambience of commercial development in the county. Objective 17-1 and policy 17.1-4 seek to facilitate patterns of development that are organized and purposeful. The internal arrangement of the site is such that it complements the character of the surrounding area in terms of the scale and intensity of the uses. The subject site meets the intent of the Urban Center Character District of the Brandon Community Plan. The Urban Center Character District is intended for the most intense land uses in the area, and an auto repair use is not out of character for the surrounding area. And based on these considerations, the Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed plan development is consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application?
Good evening. For the record, hold on a minute. Good evening, Ms. Hatley and staff. My name is Janet Lorton, and I'm here today as a private citizen, not in my role or official capacity at EPC. I've known Mr. and Mrs. Wright, Amanda and Justin, for a long time, and they are just the greatest people. They're a young couple with young children, and as Amanda said, just trying to live the American dream. And they've been at this for several years, and I do commend them for what they've achieved working with staff, but I do have some concerns. I am in support of this rezoning, in support of the staff recommendation. As the Planning Commission just said, it is consistent with what you're trying to achieve in the overlay district, but the overlay district is where I think there's maybe needs to be revisited. One of the things about revisiting this was there are projects within the overlay district. You saw one of them, Jiffy Lube, that went through a variance and, you know, literally is not meeting the same criteria that they are. And there's other projects within, you know, several blocks, you know, that again, don't meet what they have to meet in this request. One of the things that Mr. Israel was saying is there's actually two overlay districts from 75 coming up 60, and they are in the most restrictive of those. One of the things that I think should be revisited was what triggered this process was a threshold of what the building was worth to the property value. And the reality was that came up from staff, and they proposed a third-party evaluation, property evaluation, and that just wasn't considered. And I think maybe moving forward, those things should be considered to find solutions. As she said, they've gone through many iterations with staff, and I'm glad that we finally come to a successful conclusion. But, you know, it costs a lot of money with lawyers and engineers, as she said. But the target kept moving. And I talk to Amanda every month. sometimes more than once a month. We're friends. And I would ask her how things were going. And she would say, this is what we have to do. And then this is what we have to do. And then that's what we have to do. So maybe moving forward, just tell an applicant what they need to do so they can achieve what that is instead of spending a lot of money and time. Let's see if there was anything else I wanted to get on the record. They've been strong supporters of the community, and they have lots of referral letters, but again, employing people. And I think that's one of the things that I think in this solution was to capitulate and get rid of one business and get rid of those employees. That seemed a pretty hard solution to me for having to get to an acceptable outcome. But again, I am in support of what they want and what they want for their business. But I think back to the 92 gravel business that came forward with the family. It didn't have any staff approval. And it was approved by the BOCC because, again, these businesses were there, or the structures were there from 1925 and 1960. So maybe that needs to be looked at for grandfathering. Again, I'm in support. I think they have one of the nicest looking businesses. I think they're some of the hardest working people, and they're good community partners. And I hope you will approve this application as it comes to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lorton. Be sure and sign in with the clerk, please. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Do not hear anyone. All right, development services.
Nothing further.
Mr. Monsanto stated that he wished the applicant to confirm they understood something specific, and I didn't catch exactly what that was. Maybe we need to restate that and have the applicant's representative confirm that.
Yes, Israel Monsanto Development Services. Yes, just want the applicant to clarify that the 30-foot buffer reduction is exactly along the frontage of the parcel, because there is a clip that was taken by FDOT that's reduced to 3 feet, which is not exactly directly, but that I just want them to put it on the record because that's what's in the proposed site plan.
Jay Kramer for the record. Could you clarify the question, or I'm not understanding what you're.
Yeah, so the 30-foot buffer reduction is 10 feet on the frontage, and there is a 3-foot buffer on the diagonal corner of the parcel, which is the area where the FDOT clipped the parcel, which is 3 feet. So I just wanted to clarify that the reduction is going to be 10 feet on the south frontage and then 3 feet on that diagonal area. So that's the buffer approved on that clip, on that diagonal area.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Development Services, thank you. Applicant, in your rebuttal and summation, just also clarify or confirm that the applicant understands that if the PD rezoning is approved, they still have to obtain after the fact permits for those building expansions.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Jay Kramer for the record. We do understand that, and our intent is if this is approved, that will be our next step. Again, the applicant is. It's been a long journey, and we think we've come up with a good proposal to meet in the middle with staff. As one of as the public commenter mentioned, we didn't always necessarily agree with staff on which provisions of the overlay applied, because the Brandon overlay, it has something I've never seen before, which is the more improvements you do to your property, the more restrictions kick in. And so it actually ends up being a pretty big disincentive for property owners on these existing structures to improve them. But be that as it may, we worked really hard with staff. We're comfortable. We've come to a good middle ground, and I think the community is going to be really proud of this facility. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. All right, that will close the hearing on rezoning PD 22-0684.
The next item is agenda item D5, rezoning PD 22-0692, the applicant's Aero Capital LLC. The request is to rezone from commercial general and AR to planned development. Sam Ball with county staff will provide staff a recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening. David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, 33601. I'm the Director of Development and Zoning for Stearns Weaver Miller here on behalf of the applicant. I have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to provide to you for reference.
Okay. Thank you.
So good evening. This particular property, if you go to the third slide, please. The general location of this property is at the corner of I-75, actually the southwest corner of I-75 and US 92. This property is comprised of about 9 folio numbers. It's an aggregation that has been assembled in order to develop this project. While there's single-family residential and pasture on the existing property, you'll hear in just a second that this is in one of the most intense land use categories in the entire county. The adjacent zonings and uses around us are, not surprisingly, intense commercial development along US 92 corridor, and then it transitions to pasture, single-family homes, very low-density development as it moves away from that intersection. This particular property, if you'll go to the request on the next 2 slides over. No, excuse me, I'm sorry, back. No, one more. Forward. Sorry. There we go. My directions aren't very good there. Sorry about that. Yes, I will. The zoning map shows you that we have CG zoning and AR on the subject property. We're in the East Lake Orient Park Community Planning Area. We're within the urban service area. But as I mentioned, we're also in an activity center. The activity center designated in the comprehensive plan basically extends roughly 1 mile from the intersection of US 92 and I-75. The activity center is important in this case because it allows us to have a single-use industrial project as opposed to requiring a mix of 2 uses on the subject property. Again, the future land use is urban mixed use 20. Next slide, please. As I was saying, the adjacent zonings in the property are such that you have manufacturing, some PDs, and some agricultural to the north, and to the south, you have low-density residential. Clearly an indication that this property is in a transition from the old rural activities and low density to the urban density that's anticipated by the comprehensive plan. To the east is I-75, but also there is a companion PD, 220683, that was just recently approved by the Board of County Commissioners for similar uses and also in the activity center. And to the west, we have CG, AR, and also another mobile home park and RV park. Next slide, please. So the request is to allow a warehouse that would either be with or without distribution center, wholesale distribution trade, manufacturing, processing, and production as permitted uses on the property. The FAR is 0.31 before the right-of-way preservation for FDOT's widening of US 92 and also the interstate, and 0.33 FAR after the preservation of those right-of-ways. The proposal is to construct 2 warehouse buildings with internal drive aisles, stormwater pond, and parking surfaces. We're limiting the building height to 45 feet. We have setbacks of 30 foot on front, side, and rear. We allow a maximum impervious surface ratio of 80%. And our access points are limited to basically US 92 because we would not want to be taking industrial or manufacturing traffic, distribution traffic through Tanner Road, which is still a single-family residential road. We will have an emergency access point to satisfy the EMS and fire opportunities to the site, and also for potentially for the fire department and EMS to get through the site to people on Tanner Road. So when we look, next slide, please. So we look at the project. It basically lays out, fairly simple. One drive off of 92, stormwater ponds along the frontage. The frontage is obviously where we have our reservation for FDOT right away. We also have a little clip that will be occurring along I-75. They're going to be doing a lot of ramp work in the area, and this accommodates that expansion. This site plan is oriented so basically north-south is left and right as opposed to normal up and down. Tanner Road is on the southern side of the property. That is where we have emergency access. And looking, if we go to the next slide, please. We look at the comprehensive plan. The UMU 20 future land use category basically anticipates more intense employment generating opportunities. When you also look to the consistency with the East Lake Oriented Community Plan, they're looking for these commercial corridors to provide opportunities for business growth and jobs in the East Lake Orient Park community. We do have some variations. While there looks like there's several, next slide, please. There are only 3, and all of them really relate to the buffers. 2 of them relate to one single variation, and that is to allow a PV fence in lieu of a masonry wall. The third variation is to allow reduction in the effective buffer width along the western boundary where stormwater ponds within the buffer contain slopes steeper than 4:1. We had a long conversation with staff regarding the appropriate way to word that language, but the effect of it is that this site's going to have to be filled from the west to the east, and that will cause a higher end on the west side of the property. We do have a stormwater conveyance that already comes through the property, so we're having to route that around the land to make the connection under I-75. But in order to do that, it requires steeper sloped stormwater ponds. Little known in the definition of buffers, it indicates that stormwater ponds are allowed to be part of a buffer only when they have slopes of 4:1. And in our case, we'd be looking more like 2:1 in those particular areas, because when you fill the site, you don't have an ability to capture that water and bring it around. So however, we'll still have an effective buffer, because while where we have slope of greater than 4:1, we will continue to have a buffer beyond that provides the effective screening and the landscaping and the separation to protect the adjacent uses. And go to the next slide. This slide just provides for the justification for the PVC fence instead of masonry wall. Next slide. This is essentially the same variation, but for a different part of the code to allow the PVC fence as opposed to the masonry wall. Variation request 3. This one is where we discuss the 2:1 that we would have versus what is allowed for a stormwater pond in the buffer at 4:1. And all of this again relates to having to take that off-site conveyance around the site to get to the outfall that goes underneath the interstate, and allow us to still raise the site and have an effective buffer and screen. Next slide. We did have a community engagement. We had a community meeting on May 23rd. There was no opposition mentioned at during that community meeting. It was lightly attended, I must admit, but we did send out notices to all the surrounding properties and had it in a convenient location. Since that time, we've had a few calls, but there were no objections voiced on those calls. Again, a companion project, very similar to this and developed by the same applicant, is just recently approved across the I-75 on the eastern side where Tanner Road continues. That was approved on September 13th.
You say that was a companion project. It's a similar use?
Well, we call it, it's a warehouse distribution use. As you've seen in Hillsborough County, and that especially in eastern Hillsborough County, distribution centers and warehousing facilities are very high in demand right now. And this provides an opportunity for these sites, which are very difficult to develop because of their location And we worked very hard with the EPC to work on the wetlands that were on the eastern side of the property, as well as the limited wetlands on the western side of the property, to come up with a site plan that limits their impacts and provides for reasonable use of the development. So in conclusion, next slide. Development Services recommends approval. Planning Commission found the project consistent and respectfully request your recommendation of approval for this PD. Our our team is online and available to answer any questions. A representative of the applicant is here as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Development Services, please.
Good evening, Sam Ball of Hillsborough County Development Services. The applicant is requesting, to rezone a 27.8 acre property that is located in the East Lake Orient Park Community Planning Area along the west side of Interstate 75 between East Hillsborough Avenue and Tanner Road from AR and CG to planned development to allow for a maximum of 380,000 square feet of warehousing, wholesale distribution, manufacturing, processing, and production uses within two structures. The surrounding zoning and development pattern consists of a mix of residential and commercial uses. The adjoining properties to the west are developed for a mobile home park and an RV park, a mobile home and RV park, single family, and auto repair and service. The properties on the opposite side of Tanner Road to the south are developed for single family. To the east, the abutting Interstate 75 right-of-way varies from 431 to 677 feet. The property was subject of a property on the other side of Interstate 75 was approved, as the applicant stated, for similar use. If approved, planned development would allow for development of warehousing with or without distribution, manufacturing, processing, production, and that was for the PD across the tail. It was the same use. To the north of East Hillsborough Avenue, the properties are developed as a propane gas supply company, a memorial park, and a mixed-use site with residential and commercial activities. After dedications, the planned development would allow a maximum of 380,000 square feet of gross floor area, which would result in a floor area ratio of 0.33. The building height would be restricted to 45 feet with 30-foot setback from the front, rear, and side property lines. A 30-foot type C buffer would also be required where the property abuts the residential properties to the west. In addition to the 30-foot type C buffer, the building envelopes are also separated from the abutting residential properties to the west by a drive aisle and with parking that is approximately 70 feet wide. The building envelope will be separated from Tanner Road with a drive aisle that is approximately 110 feet wide, in addition to a 30-foot type C buffer. The remaining boundaries of the property about commercial properties used for vehicle repair and customization, 130 feet of right-of-way to the north, 431 to 677 feet of right-of-way of Interstate 75 right-of-way to the east, and except for emergency ingress and egress, access will be restricted to East Hillsborough Avenue and routed away from the neighboring residential properties. The applicant is requesting variations from LDC section 60606 and 60101 to reduce the buffer width to accommodate the storm pond and to allow a PVC fence in lieu of a masonry wall that would apply to the western boundary of the property. Due to the 30-foot type C landscape buffer and the additional building envelope separation shown on the general development plan, the restriction to passenger vehicle parking only, staff finds the use of the 6-foot tall PVC fence would provide adequate screening between the development and the residential properties. Additionally, the required landscape plantings would still be installed within the remaining reduced buffer width and would be able to achieve a similar effective screening result. So based on the urban mixed-use future land use classification, the surrounding zoning development pattern, and proposed uses, development standards for the planned development, zoning, For the Plan Development Zoning District, staff finds the request approvable. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Ball, just on the staff report on the front page, at the bottom, it refers to waivers to the Land Development Code, and I just want to clarify that those are actually variations that require the hearing master to make certain findings, isn't that? Can we clarify those are variances, not waivers, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Well, I meant variations, but yes, waivers.
There's a difference. I have to make findings on variations.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're not variations. They're waivers to the LDC. I'm sorry.
They are variations.
Okay.
Oh,
and I'm
great.
required to make findings.
Yes. Correct.
Thank you. All right. Understood. All right. Planning Commission, please.
This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The site has a future land use designation of urban mixed use 20 or UMU 20. It's in the urban service area and within the limits of the East Lake community plan. The subject site is surrounded on the west and south by the UMU 20 future land use category. Further to the east is I-75 with a portion designated as public/quasi-public institutions, future land use category. To the north are properties designated as community mixed use 12. The proposed planned development is in the urban service area and is compatible with the existing character and development in the area. The site's existing land use is agricultural and single-family detached residential. The surrounding uses include heavy and light commercial, vacant properties, single-family, detached residential, mobile home parks, and agricultural lands. The proposed use is comparable to the established development pattern. Along the southern property boundary is Tanner Road, which is a 50-foot right-of-way. The applicant provides for an emergency access only and a 30-foot buffer with the PVC fencing adjacent to Tanner Road. The proposed plan development is consistent with the economic development policies as the proposal is industrial warehousing. This use is typically associated with receiving goods, short-term storage, possibly assembly and distribution, which would all produce additional jobs. The subject site meets the intent of the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan. The proposed site plan is providing a 30-foot buffer with PVC fencing along the southern and western property boundaries. Access is limited to emergency vehicles only along Tanner Road, eliminating any commercial traffic encroachment into the residential area. And based on these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the Future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right. Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Was there someone who wanted to speak in opposition or in support of this application?
My name is Diana Keene, and I'm a resident on Tanner Road.
Ma'am, could you provide your address for the record?
Pardon?
Could you provide your address for the record? Thank you.
10207 Tanner Road.
Thank you.
It's within walking distance of this project. Tanner Road does end in I-75, and all of a sudden, we are having these two big projects, one on one side of 75 and one on the west, and the east. And at the same time, this is going to add a lot to our little community in there. And we do have several homes. It is a neighborhood, and we've all been, close and everything. We've got kids in there that go to the community church and to Mango School and all. And my concern is the wide range of the usage of the building. They can do almost anything in those buildings. There's not much that they can't do.
Excuse me.
Except maybe open a theater or something like that. I'm concerned about Tanner Road. Now, I know they're saying they're going to have only a emergency exit. Is that will be for fire trucks, EMS, and things like that? Because we live there, and it's going to be a big adjustment. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I would just like them to consider that they are moving into our neighborhood where there's lots of people, and we're concerned about traffic even on 92. We have trouble getting out from Sylvia, which exits from Tanner Road to 92. Sylvia Road does. And between 3 and 6, you can't get out. It's just traffic all the way up 92. And on Falkenberg, where Tanner exits, the same thing there, because we have a lot of it is commercial, but it has insurance companies and all that provide a lot of traffic in there. I'm glad to see the growth. I hope it's not going to be ugly. We would like for it to have some grass, some trees, and have it landscaped. That's something that we're comfortable with. And just to take that people are living there and still wanting to live a life without a lot of coming and going and noise and any kind of runoff or anything that will obstruct our water usage. We all have wells, and we're not on sewage. We have a lot of runoff that comes from Falkenberg all the way down Tanner, and will go into where they're building the retention ponds and all. And I'd hate to see them build ponds and all on the west side that would back the water up on the people that live on Tanner Road and all. I'm happy for the people that are selling out. It's really a family residential road. Everybody on there was kind of related, and that's how it's got its name, Tanner Road. And we've always been real proud of what we've done there and all. And we would like to keep a little bit of our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Please see the clerk right here and sign in before you leave. Is there anyone else who wished to speak in opposition to this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
In response to your question about emergency access, yeah, the intent is to be utilized for primarily emergency vehicles. Part of the purpose is if for some reason if access to the main access point gets blocked, it provides for an emergency access to get access to the site in the event that access point is blocked for emergencies. Just wanted to note that for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. Applicant?
Thank you, David Smith, for the record.
Mr. Smith, I think it would be helpful if you would clarify the intended uses for the buildings and also describe the water, the stormwater management.
Sure, and let me kind of do that in the simpler part first. So the stormwater system is designed to basically take all the flow that's coming off-site, not to interrupt that, and to carry it through its natural outfall. The site's own stormwater retention are the large ponds, excuse me, that will be along US 92. Those ponds are sized to take all the surface runoff off of our buildings and our parking areas, collect those, and also pop off. I think the one thing I want to clarify that I said to you earlier is that we have the stormwater conveyance and it was coming around the site from the west, then it was headed east, and then it was going over to the interstate. Actually goes just the opposite. The higher part, it comes from the east, goes around the building, gets picked up along US 92, and then it's discharged under the interstate. Essentially, it's still the off-site conveyance that we were discussing before. Also, just a point that she didn't ask, but relative to the appearance of the buildings and how it's going to be developed, this site actually is going to be cut down some. So there will not be as much fill as anticipated. The owner clarified for me that on the west side of the site, that we'll have that conveyance system that circulates around the property, but we will actually cut the site down. So even though we may have a 45-foot tall building, actually there'll be a reduction in the current grade so that more of that building will be down at grade and screened from view by the landscaping and the trees that will be in the buffer area. With respect to the uses, we did have a wide range of uses. Warehouse distribution was the principal use, and that is in high demand. However, we added to that the ability to have small manufacturing operations and processing, which may be assembly operations, but we have performance standards that have to be met relative to any noise, dust, vibration. They're very limited on what they can do in these areas to protect the offsite uses. So manufacturing, processing, and assembly is just a term in the code that deals with any type of assembly operations, the manufacture of any type of product, and also the processing of materials. So it is a wide range, and we apologize for that being so wide of a range, but that is just a typical category within the plan. I will meet with the folks after. They do live down Sylvia on Tanner Road, but further west, and therefore they weren't in the notice distance for the community meeting. And so just before you started to ask for comments from the public, she was asking me, she just had a lot of questions. I'll meet with her after to discuss those, and hopefully we'll make them feel a bit more comfortable as to what's happening on site.
All right, sir. Thank you. That closes the hearing on rezoning PD 22-0692.
The final item then is agenda item D6. It's rezoning PD 22-0864. The applicant is Barry Lawrence. The request is rezone from RSC 9 with restrictions to ASC and ASC 1 to plan development. Michelle Heinrich will provide staff recommendation after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening. William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard. I will be very brief with my remarks. I didn't have a lot of utility to add to this situation. Ms. Albert was actually the principal planner on this one. Just want to say this is not a new project for your consideration. Rather, it's a longstanding, beloved community use, an agricultural fruit stand, which unfortunately found itself on the wrong end of some code enforcement action recently. We don't need to go through the hows and whys. I assure you the backstory of how we got here is very colorful, but it's not helpful at all. With that, I'm going to let our very professional planner explain where we may have been deficient on the project and everything we've done to bring it up to compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Be sure and sign in.
Thank you. Good evening. Isabel Albert with Half Associates, 1000 North Ashley Drive, Suite 900. I have a presentation for you. Yes. Thank you. So as you know, this is for plan development application 22-0864, also very well known as Bears Grove on Bears Avenue. Next, please. So what we have for you is this is the location. It's located at the southwest corner of Bears and Lake Magdalene. It is currently zoned ASC 1 and RSC 9. A portion of it, half of the wetland is actually RSC 9. And In the future land use of residential 4 and all around, the area is also residential 4. It's Greater Carrollwood, Northdale Community Plan, as well as in the urban service area. And it also has currently a greenbelt exemption. Next, please. So I think it's important to talk about the history. This is not a new use. It's been there for a very long time. In fact, on their banner, it's been there for over a century. The stand, as you see on the upper corner, this is an aerial that was taken from 1989, but it's been there longer than that. But you can see the stand's been there, the growth's been there, the residence was there, as well as I put the residence on the east side of Lake Magdalene. That's the Bears family that are still there currently today. And what happened now in 2010, they sold a portion of their land west of their subject site, which you'll see on the south side, where they started developing. But the stand and the residents are still there, and the agricultural use is still there. And then in 2012, the applicant today has taken over the business and has continued running it as it has been for a long time. This site is known and considered as a landmark of the community, in the community, and a focal point of the community. Next, please. So the proposal is nothing new. It's basically just asking to maintain what's been existing. There's the ag stand there. They are also, if you look in the checkered area, that's the harvest area. They grow vegetables and fruits. And part of the application, though, we are asking for a reduction in the buffer area on the west side, and that is simply because of the way, I guess, the land would be subdivided. But those buildings have always been there, and we want to maintain that. But you know, when they did the residential development, they did put up a 6-foot wall, as we can see right there in the lower right-hand corner, and it kind of meets the intent of the code. Next, please. We do have recommendation from all reviewing agencies. The development services staff found the recommendation, the application approvable, and the planning commission found it consistent with their comprehensive plan, as well as the community plan of the Carrollwood. I'm here if you have any questions. With us, we also have Michael Yates, who has generously helped us with this process, and I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. I have no questions for you right now.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, development services, please.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. As you heard, this is a rezoning request for property zoned ASC 1 and RSC 9 to PD to allow for an agriculture stand, single-family home, and fruit and vegetable harvesting areas. A rezoning is necessary due to a portion of the site being zoned RSC 9, which the applicant showed you in her presentation, and the need for a PD variation. The site is approximately 2.8 acres in size and located at the southwest corner of Lake Magdalene Boulevard and Beers Avenue. The applicants wish to continue the uses already occurring on the property under the current layout. The current layout requires a PD variation to the western buffer and screening, which per the LDC requires a 20-foot wide buffer and type B screening. The applicants propose a 15-foot buffer to recognize the existing structure setbacks and no screening on their property due to the presence of a 6-foot high wall encompassing the adjacent neighborhood. Proposed conditions are in line with the LDC's agricultural stand conditional use standards, with the exception of the aforementioned buffering and screening PD variation. And I would also note that the applicants are proposing more restrictive hours of operation, which is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The request has been found consistent by the Planning Commission staff, and no agency objections were received. We therefore recommend approval subject to proposed conditions, and I'm available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Planning Commission?
This is Jillian Massey with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located in the residential 4 future land use classification. It's in the urban service area and within the limits of the Greater Carrollwood Northdale Community Plan. Agricultural uses in this category are permitted if they're consistent with the agriculture objective in the future land use element. Residential 4 surrounds the subject site on all sides. Although the site is in the residential 4 future land use category, it is proposing an agricultural stand use with a single family residential dwelling use and does not meet the minimum density as per policy 1.2 of the future land use element. However, the site does meet the exception to minimum density in policy 1.3 as the wetlands make up 21% of the site. The other proposed use on the site is also restricted to agricultural stand uses and related uses, and the proposal meets the exception to the minimum density required. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of Objective 9 and Policy 9.2 as the applicant has met all requirements for the proposed agricultural stand use in existing residential structure. The rezoning meets the intent of Objective 16 and its associated policies as it is external to the existing residential subdivision to the west, and the natural features of the site act as an appropriate buffer. The use also demonstrates an acceptable transition of uses by providing the agricultural stand use at a major intersection node. The surrounding area is predominantly low density, single family residential, and an agricultural stand that has a historic presence in the area does not present compatibility concerns due to the surrounding existing residential development. The subject site meets commercial locational criteria as per Objective 22 and Policy 22.2 of the future land use element, as 75% of the frontage of the site is within 900 feet of the qualifying intersection node of the intersection of Bears Avenue and Lake Magdalene Boulevard. The proposed rezoning also meets the intent of agricultural objectives 29 and 30 and their respective policies, which recognize the importance of the agricultural activity in the overall county with regards to economic importance and cultural heritage, and especially recognizes agricultural activity in the non-rural land use categories such as residential 4. The request is consistent with the Greater Carrollwood-Northdale Community Plan Goal 2 that recognize unique focal points of its community. The subject site is considered a landmark that is much used by the surrounding community and can be considered one of those focal points of the Greater Carrollwood Northdale community. Based upon these considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application?
We have a group of folks here, and I think in the interest of time, we're just going to have them come up, say their name, they support, and
All right, thank you. Please come forward.
My name is Marilyn Bierce, as in Bierce Road, Bierce Groves. I do support this. It has been was in my family for several years.
Ma'am,
and my family got the property.
if you could give your address for the record.
14215 Lake Magdalene Boulevard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Suzette Murphy, and I reside at 13805 Cherry Creek Drive, Tampa, Florida, zip code 33618. And I am in support of Bears Grove Fruit Stand. It's a wonderful asset to our area. We'd like to see that for all our future generations there.
Thank you.
Hi, and my name's Jared Bragg, 801 East Chapman Road. I'm an employee at Bears Groves, and I've been there for about 8 years now. And I just don't want to see it go anywhere, and I think that the community fully supports that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Savannah Grooms. I live at 14225 Lake Magdalene Boulevard. I'm the manager at Bears Groves. I've been there for about 5 years now. We're a small-time place. There's only 8 of us. We really feel like we're an asset to the community, and we're just doing our best out there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hope Hamilton. I live at 2413 Clark Road. I've been at Beers Grove, for about 3 years now, and I've been going there since before I can even remember. And it's a very special place to everybody in the whole community, and it truly is a staple. So we don't want that to change at all anytime soon, at all. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Barry Lawrence, 116 Crenshaw Lake Road. I am the owner of Bears Groves and the Bears property. I started working there when I was 13. I'm 42. I've been there my entire life, and the past 4 years has been very stressful. So I really appreciate your help with this, and please look forward to this zoning going through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrea Albert. I live at 4510 3rd Street Circle West, Bradenton, Florida, 34207. My daughter, Savannah, is the general manager, and we've been going since before that. And she also lives on the property, and the company has provided her a career that is beyond what I could have expected for her at 26 years old. And I'm just so happy that she's there, and I hope that nothing ever happens to it. And I'm in full support of whatever's going on, even though I don't really understand all of the lingo, but support it completely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Samuel Amos, and I'm going to be residing at 2413 Clark Road. I am in massive support of Bears Groves. I have seen just how hard these people work and support Barry and support this team like nothing else. I would sit through 1,000,000 hours of listening to y'all just so I can say how much we support them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Applicant, anything further for Beers Groves?
You're making me thirsty. Isabel Albert for the record. Yes, I actually do want to clarify, if you don't mind putting up the slide for the proposal. This just came to me when I was seeing this, and I meant to say it earlier, and I'm sorry about that. We are proposing on the site plan, we're proposing a pedestrian access, which is located on the north boundary line right there. But there's actually an existing, totally on the west side of it, that's closest to the residents there. There's an existing pedestrian access there. The gate is open during the day for everyone to come in. So we were wondering if we're just going to move over that arrow to there. I was unaware that it already had an access there, but we would like to have, recognize the existing access, pedestrian access.
Okay, and that the intent is for that existing access to remain?
To remain, exactly.
Okay.
To remain. Yes, staff wanted to make sure, because there's going to be a crosswalk across the thing, wanted to make sure that somebody on Bears could come inside. And since that's the growing area, actually the applicant just told me, he's like, there's actually one currently in use on the east side where there's no growing area.
So are you proposing then to remove that one on the, that would be the east side?
Yes.
And keep the one on the west side?
Right. So just to recognize their existing one on the west. So we're just moving it over from the east to the west, but there will be a pedestrian access there.
Okay. Does Development Services need to speak to that or review that?
So the access, you're still going to provide a pedestrian access, just be on the west side?
Correct. So this access was proposed to make sure that there's pedestrians on Bears Avenue that could access the site. We put one there in discussion with staff because it was the closest one to the intersection. But the client explained to me, he's like, well, the access there's currently one pedestrian access on the west side of the property that people are using. So he's like, can we just maintain that one? So we're just going to relocate from the east side to the west.
conceptually, I don't have a problem. I guess I'd ask transportation staff if they have any particular issue with that. But I mean, the intent is to provide access, so I'll ask them. And this is the first we've heard of this, so.
Are they online?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, for the record, James Ratliff, Transportation Review Section. I was just looking down on Street View and, trying to find the one that she's referencing. I don't really see anything except a little chain link. There looks like there could possibly be a little gate that's immediately next to a stone pillar. Is that the one that's?
Right, yes, right next, there's like there's a stone pillar, and right next to it, there is a chain link gate there that they keep open during the day.
Yeah, I guess, honestly, it's very difficult to evaluate this on such short notice. I think that the concern that I have just looking at it right here is that it looks like there could be potentially grade issues here. It's certainly not paved currently. It doesn't, it doesn't meet standards for an access today. And there's still some issue that's open in terms of how the pedestrian connectivity for the required sidewalk along Lake Magdalene is going to be provided. And there were options provided in the staff report to address the various options that have been discussed. My concern with moving, even if that access could be improved to meet standards, I think, there's a question about taking it all the way to the west, whether that makes it overly circuitous in terms of folks coming from.
Just leave that one. Then we'll leave that one, but we're also going to add another arrow to the existing access point to the one that's being used.
And that would be fine. I believe the zoning conditions provide that pedestrian access can occur anywhere along the subject property without modification to the PD.
I didn't hear that, so I'm sorry.
Mr. Ratliff, would you repeat that, please?
Sure. I believe the proposed conditions include a condition, and let me just verify that, that essentially says that pedestrian access can occur anywhere along the PD boundaries without having to have a zoning modification. So you would be able to put additional access points in. That's not a problem. It's simply that the moving.
So just for the record, we're going to add an arrow there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That closes the hearing on rezoning PD 22-0864, and that will conclude the zoning hearing master meeting this evening. Thank you.